All right. We're officially live. My apologies for being slightly late. Uh, how unfair. How unfair that I show up so late when you might have been there waiting. How unfair. Oh my goodness, this is going to be fun. Welcome to the program, Holding Space for Love to Be Seen. My name is Tiger. I'm going to be the host for this journey. And once again, I'm, just scrambling around trying to press buttons and get this show launched. But I want to just take a soft moment and appreciate that you're here. Folks showing up from all around the world to watch live. That's just super sweet. Thanks for joining me. My name's Tiger. I'm going to do what I do, which is hold space for love to be seen. And I'm going to share some insight and wisdom on today's topic for this program, the title of which is Why Life Isn't Fair and Why That's a Good Thing. And man, oh man, I hope you had the chance to read the pre-broadcast reflections. I wrote a lengthy one on this, and I'm just impressed with myself in the most playful way possible, because that was just a creative thought stream that I put down on paper about this topic. And I just had so much fun writing it. And I really feel like it does a better job of pointing to what I'm pointing to, more so than me just running my mouth, which is what we're going to do on this program, is listen to me run my mouth. So, and I've got some tea. This is a first for this particular program, but usually when I do my talking, I've got some tea close by. Partly why I was late. I sat there and waited for the water to boil for 3.5 minutes. And then it was like too late. Anyway, the format for this program, I'm doing the intro. We're going to do my favorite part, which is 2 minutes of stillness. I think that's such a unique thing about this show, that we do a program where no one says anything for 2 minutes. And it just allows me to settle in and just be here with you. And especially if you're going to hang out for the hour, I invite you to embrace that 2 minutes of stillness and just settle in. Collect yourself in this moment. And then from that stillness, I'm going to share some insight and wisdom on the topic. That'll last for about 30, 40 minutes. And then we'll do some Q&R, questions and reflections. If you guys have any questions, you can type it up on the screen, or reflections you want to share. Also, I've got some questions that people sent in before the program that I will probably go over as well. And then we will wrap up with a short and sweet guided meditation that lasts 5 minutes and 18 seconds long. Super stoked to have you here. Okay, let's jump in and do this thing. And we will kick off the 2 minutes of stillness. All right. That was it. That was 2 minutes of stillness. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I love coming out of that space. I just feel so much more here with you, ready to dive into this. I don't know if you noticed, but I'm testing out a new light feature behind me there, that strip. I don't know what else to say about it, but I thought I might mention it because it's new. Add some depth to the studio, but really I'm just playing, seeing what works. Now I'm doing a little light test. I think that's a little too bright. Maybe that's better. Okay, well, my goodness. Welcome to the program again. We're going to dive into this topic, and it was recommended from the audience that I somehow speak about the concept of wanting things to be fair when they seemingly are unfair, which also kind of ties into maybe our concepts about justice. And I'm just going to put a disclaimer out there because I love a good disclaimer. I'm sharing what I see within what I am. And I'm doing all of this, whatever this is, for the sake of my own enjoyment. I enjoy questioning my own beliefs, my own thoughts, my own assumptions. And I love recognizing what exists outside of my mental commentary. What's real. And that's super beautiful because as I investigate the nature of reality, the nature of the real self, I find an immensity of love, compassion, and freedom. And it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And so naturally, I spend, well, a large portion of my life exploring that and then painting pictures of it with words. And this is purely for my own enjoyment. And often when I'm talking and sharing, I'm literally talking to myself. I know it sounds like I'm talking to you, it might sound like I'm talking about you, but whenever I say you, I'm looking into a camera hole and I'm talking to myself. And when I say we, I'm talking about all the different parts of myself. And you get to listen in. And if you find some enjoyment with me, fantastic. If not, no worries. Okay, that's the disclaimer. You know what I find fascinating about this concept of fairness, and I explored this a bit in the pre-broadcast reflection post, is that if I really want to believe that fairness is a real thing, then I will spend my time looking for its opposite. Because in order for fairness to be a real thing, there has to be something called unfairness. And so to validate my concept of fairness, I empower a perceived reality of unfairness. And then I go to war over these ideas. And then also what I find to be fascinating about the concept of fairness is that as it relates to me getting what I want, I have to constantly be comparing myself with other people. Do you see how this is the reality? That in order for me to experience what I think is fairness, I have to compare myself with other people. How's that going? That really sets us up for a disaster. To spend so much mental energy preoccupied with what you perceive to be unfairness, which arises through a comparison with other people. And there's another disaster that arises in this, which is, and my goodness, I'm going to say this, but it touches such a deeper topic that touches so many other things. As I mentioned, that if I believe in the concept of fairness, I automatically create unfairness, which means I will see in my own experience both ends of that spectrum, which I will see myself as in a unbalanced situation where it's not fair that I have what I have and others have what they have. So I will effectively be minimizing and rejecting my own experience because it doesn't compute with my fantasy of fairness. Again, comparing my life with somebody else's life, which is also quite interesting because if you compare your life with other people's life, you can find everything, right? If you compare your life with this person over here, then your life looks a certain way. If you compare your life with that person over there, your life looks a certain way. But it only looks that way through a comparison. And furthermore, what you're comparing with is not the reality of that something, but your idea of that something. That's an important note. We think we're comparing ourselves with other people, but actually, you're comparing yourself with your idea of that other person. And so again, we're completely missing reality. This presents another delusional obstacle that will be impossible to remedy. And this is for those who, like myself, are lovers of insight and wisdom that expose the wholeness in all things, expose the sacred truth that it's all one. And that is the concept of fairness implies two. Do you notice that? The concept of fairness says all is not one. It says there's two or more. And so to assume that fairness is real and likewise unfairness is real, it implies that there is a real separation. Now, don't get me wrong here. In one regard, I understand in the human game that we're playing, sure, it's nice when things seem like they're fair. Sure, I get that. However, There's what the mind thinks is nice, and then there's what's true, man. There's what's real. And you can enjoy the niceness of whatever idea. But if you fight for that idea, when that idea doesn't actually exist in reality, you're fighting against reality. And this is what human beings love to do. They love to fight reality. They love to fight what's true in the hope of making their concepts true, in the hopes of validating their own belief structures, which is really an attempt to validate who they think they are. However, what I invite you to recognize and to really investigate is in that inner assumption that life should be fair. Tell me how that does not create an enormous amount of judgment, projections of guilt, and malicious thought streams that want to punish other people and withhold freedom from other people. That's interesting. Because it is these constructs that we cling to that are at the source of our inner torment. Because when you want what is not, you're in opposition to reality. Now, if one were to see themselves and see reality clearly, there would not be an agitation that wants what is not. Because one would recognize an inherent wholeness to what they are, that what they really are isn't missing anything. And again, if one has not seen behind the veil of the mind's dream, that might sound like insanity. But if you've had a taste to any degree of your true nature, then you know that this is incredibly true. And also, and again, playfully speaking, but also sincerely speaking, as it relates to this whole pointing that I'm doing, this whole sharing and what I'm pointing to, I understand that there can be a pretty big disconnect between what people think I'm saying and what I'm actually pointing to. Because human beings are under the hypnosis that their mental content is reality. People are under the hypnosis that the truth can be found in the mind. People are under the hypnosis that when they think about life, they think they're thinking about life rather than seeing that they're thinking about their own thinking. Rather than seeing that thinking cannot touch life. And then furthermore, as human beings, we're living a dream of reality. A dream that includes other people, systems, processes, structures that are really just all mental content. And somewhere in that, human beings try to find a way to, let's say, survive within that construct. But yet, what they're really trying to survive is their character in that construct. It's like people are trying to survive who they think they are in the world rather than surviving as a living and breathing being. And so there can be a pretty vast, playful distance between trying to understand what I'm saying in the context of that dream and then seeing what I'm saying in the context of reality beyond the dream. And that's why this is fun to playfully talk about. Because in some ways, it invites the closing of the gap, the loosening of our grip about our ideas and assumptions, and what we think should or should not be. How long has that been going on? Whoops. 3 minutes ago. One sec, I had an audio problem. We're back. I'm assuming you guys can hear me now, for those who could not. Looks like it was just a few minutes. Anyway. Investigate the pain. Because here's the thing. If you're stuck in unfairness and there's pain, there's also an assumption that it's because of other people or the world that's causing you that pain. And so we're taking that pain and we're blaming it on something out there. Something out there not being how it's supposed to be. But that's insane. We cannot experience emotional disturbance because of what's happening out there. We can only experience emotional disturbance because we're not seeing life clearly. In the same way that you could suffer over not having what you want, and you can say you're suffering because you don't have what you want. No, you're suffering because you're wanting what's not. You're saying in your suffering that you're incomplete, that you're unwhole, that you're not enough. And you're blaming that on the world. And this happens with concepts of fairness and unfairness. We suffer on the inside because we don't have what we think we want. And we say that's unfair. And so I'm suffering because of XYZ not being how I think it should be. No, that's not why you're suffering. That's not how it works. It's so interesting to always be exploring that, of how we can create so much internal drama, so much internal agitation, and then think it's happening because life is being life, as if that's happening to us. But that's not what's happening at all. And it's the misunderstanding about what's happening, which is perpetuating the suffering. Okay. I want to dig into the Q&R section about this. Questions and reflections. And see what's going on from those in the audience. Anika says, but what if the pain is about the unfairness to your child? How do you dive into the pain and separate from the unfairness? Well, that's such an interesting and beautiful thing to explore. My goodness. Oh my goodness. And it's a whole nother video. Can you start by seeing that what you think is the unfairness to your child is only what you think is the unfairness to your child. Meaning, you're projecting unfairness. Can you see two things? Two things. Can you see, one, that you're putting the concept of unfairness onto reality? Right? Like, for example, your child doesn't get picked for the sports team, and your child gets their feelings hurt, and they say, I'm not good enough, no one loves me. And so your child experiences suffering because of the confusion. And then you don't want to see your child suffering. And then you think, well, that's unfair. So there's the reality of what's happening. Kids are playing a game, and these kids want these kids on their team, and somehow your child doesn't get picked for those teams. Okay? What does that mean? In reality, what does it mean outside of your meaning? What does it mean outside of what you think it means? And essentially, the answer is it doesn't mean what you think it means. But what do you think it means? You think it means it's unfair. And what comes with that perception of unfairness? So many things that create suffering. The second part is you think the unfairness that you're seeing is in reality. You think it's something out there. So you put it there, and then you think you're separate from it. And so now it's out here attacking you, but you put it there. This is what we always do. We create imaginary monsters and we put them in reality, and then we say that those monsters are attacking us. But you put them there. Yes, even if it's a medical issue, which again is just so much more beautiful things to dive into. Anika, back to what you're saying, but what if the pain is about the unfairness? The pain is not about the unfairness. And it's also to say the pain is not about the reality of what is or is not. The pain is in what you think it means about you. And then you can say, no, it's about my kid. No, it's not. It's about you in relation to your kid. Ultimately, it comes back to you thinking you're not good enough to make sure your child has a fair opportunity. And so you'll feel inadequate. And that'll be your pain. And then you can blame that pain on your child's pain and say, I'm suffering because my child's suffering, which isn't the case. And so that's just, I mean, again, I'd want to just spend hours with you gently exploring this, but to say a little bit, that's what I'd say. So how do you separate from the unfairness? You see that there's no separation in the unfairness, meaning that the unfairness is solely your creation. Because again, the pain assumes that the unfairness is not your creation. The pain assumes that you're separate from the unfairness. But see that you're creating it and you're giving it meaning. And that meaning doesn't actually exist in reality. Jamie says, I'm new to non-duality, but could you say what you're saying is based on non-duality. I'm looking more into it because I honestly feel it makes complete sense, and suffering no longer will exist in my eyes if I see it correctly. What I'm saying could be interpreted through a non-duality lens, but I'm not promoting non-duality. I actually just did a live video called The Failure and Beauty of Non-Duality. If you can't find that, send me a message, and I think that'll be a big eye-opener for you so you don't get too lost in the world of non-duality. But in a way, non-duality also points to what I'm saying. Ava says, how do you separate pain from unjust medical treatment from failed spine surgery? I love this. Unjust, which is unfair, right? And this is what I was talking about, like concepts of justice is the same as fair and unfair. And again, I let the world play its game, right? I'm not insinuating that the world shouldn't be the world and they should go about it in the ways that they go about it. I'm not here to dictate what other people should be doing. The world is free to play their game. I'm just not going to play along in that one, in that game. But the question again, how do you separate pain from unjust medical treatment from failed spine surgery? Okay, that's a good one. We have to understand pain. I'm talking about emotional pain. Physical pain requires no suffering. We don't suffer over physical pain. One has to get in touch with the real heart of suffering and ask, what am I really suffering about? And the mind will have its knee-jerk reaction that's full of blame. And we need to see that. I'm suffering over what this person did, what they didn't do. I'm suffering over my circumstance, what I have or what I don't have. Nope. Nope. Do you realize that what that says is that I'm powerless? I'm suffering over that thing out there that I'm separate from. That thing out there made me suffer. And so if I am going to be free from suffering, that thing out there must be different. You're a prisoner. That is not the truth of reality. I understand it can look like that. Life can look a lot of ways, but it doesn't mean life is that way. Just like you can look at a cloud and it might look like a rabbit, but it doesn't mean it's a rabbit. It might really, really, really look like you're suffering because of what somebody else said or what somebody else did. But that is not the mechanism of suffering. The mechanism of suffering primarily is there to wake you up, is to help you see more clearly. How do you separate pain from XYZ life experience? You get profoundly honest about the pain. Because on the surface, the lie of pain says I'm suffering about XYZ. But what are you really suffering about? that takes you into the heart and looks at the real issue. And I'm going to leave you with that, Ava. I'm going to leave you at that and then keep showing up to this program. Maybe it'll become more clear. But I love you and I'm sorry that you're hurting. But wake up. Yeah, Nika, DM me. And you said even if it's a medical issue, it doesn't matter what it is. Like literally, it doesn't matter what it is that we imagine. Medical issue, family issue, death issue. It's suffering is never about those things. Jamie says, my father has been on and off suicidal for the past year. He's starting to show signs again. My family pretends it isn't happening, and when I try to talk to them, they lie about having it handled and tell me to stay out of it. It's disturbing. What about that? Well, you tell me. What about that? Let me ask you, what do you think that means? Because again, in one way, you're telling me what you see, right? One person could tell me the exact same thing. And instead of the question, what about that? They might say, isn't that funny? Because they give it a completely different meaning. And if you experience pain in your description, then the pain is in a meaning that you have about that. What does it mean? Even to say they lie about having it handled. Okay, what does that mean? What does it mean? You see, and we can say, I'm suffering because I think they lied to me. No, you're suffering because of what you think it means. And in some way or another, the story is going to say, I think it means that I'm less than. I think it means that I'm not enough. I think it means that I'm undeserving of love. And these are all confusions that just simply aren't real and not true. The mental illness part of suffering that you're asking about, and in the way that you're describing how you go about approaching it, it makes perfect sense why it's not helping. And my goodness, and I've got to wrap up here soon. My playful apologies for not being able to dive into this more and whatever, but not really, because it just is what it is. And again, I'm sharing my perspective and even my experience with so-called mental illness, finding out it's totally not what I thought it was. The world in general is clueless about these things. And so often the advice that's given isn't given based on what's true. It's given based on what they've been told is true. And again, I guess just as like a playful example, if you look through the history of time and even just say the past 100 years, experts have touted some truth some discovery that says we figured it out, it's this. And then we find out it's not. And then we find out in their declaration of it's this or that, there were all sorts of hidden agendas for their own personal gain. And so not only was it lacking any substantial truth, but it's lacking a tremendous amount of authenticity and sincerity. And so, again, for myself and the world I experience, I'm completely uninterested in what experts say. It's an issue for deep self-inquiry and a deep listening to the body, a deep listening to what appears to be the illness and getting in touch with it and asking what's going on. But besides that, send me a DM. Maybe I can go in more detail about it or point you in a direction. All right, folks. I'm going to switch gears and do this short guided meditation. And I have another live broadcast today in 5 hours from now, which is called Why Worry When You Can Meditate. You might want to check that out. But let's do the meditation. Let's drop in to reality for a moment. Just be here with me. As we come back to reality, we can watch all the thoughts fade away. In one way, recognizing that whatever we're thinking about simply isn't relevant for this moment. Can we acknowledge that all the emotional disturbances, the resentment, the fear, the worry, the stress, the anxiety, it's all responding to stories believed in, thoughts strung together in the most adorably insane sort of way. None of it's actually happening right now. So let's come back to reality. Come home. Can we come to terms with the truth that life isn't supposed to be how we want it to be? Life is supposed to be life, so that life can be life. And maybe we can recognize that it's not life That is the problem. The difficulty is going to war with life. The difficulty is trying to control what is not yours to control. Holding on to what is not yours to hold on to. So let's come back to ourselves and see that we are whole and complete. Breathe with me here. Everything's okay. Right here, right now. Okay. Now go play. Thanks for meditating with me today. All right. We did it. Man, so much more I would love to say about this topic. It's so incredibly deep. Oh, Jennifer, thank you for the donation. Forgot to even ask. Thanks for supporting this program so we can keep doing what we do. Keep showing up to hold space. Join the community. It's free. Dive deeper. Recognize that this discovery is the most important thing. Thank you, Nikki, for the donation. Thank you, Ellen Berry. I'll be back in 5 hours. Aloha. And cheers to the beauty that you already are.